Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views of myself, Salailo Makudiri. 8:36 Central African time is the part of the morning where we currently find ourselves in. And we're going to be switching gears to a very, very important conversation leading up to the local government elections later on in the year. The United Ulama Council of South Africa has concluded a very, very significant 3-day municipal elections in Indaba here in Johannesburg South. And it brought together uh, people from various walks of life, political parties, Muslim leaders, professionals, academics, business representatives, media representatives, and just civil society organizations in general from all across the country. And the discussions formed part of UUCSA's efforts to strengthen Muslim participation in South Africa's democratic process, as I mentioned, ahead of the 2026 local government elections. And delegates engaged directly with representatives of around 6 political parties on issues that were wide ranging, from service delivery and corruption to unemployment, crime, economic inclusion, and international relations, especially South Africa's position on Palestine and how these political parties look to maneuver their stance on that particular issue. The Indaba also saw the development of a Muslim civic consensus, a policy framework that is aimed at helping Muslim communities engage more effectively with public policy and governance, while also encouraging informed and meaningful electoral participation. We need to get more people voting. Muslims need to be involved in the discourse of the country. And I think that was the key, I think, takeaway from myself. I was there in the last day of the 3-day summit. It was a 3-day long summit. Our CEO, Pontumaletsane, I think was there for the entirety of it as one of the media stakeholders. And I think it was very, very significant. And we're going to be unpacking some of the outcomes of that gathering and what it means for Muslim voters and just the broader democratic landscape here in South Africa. And we're joined by Fazlin Fransman, a member of the UUCSA Political Strategy Committee. Fazlin, salamu alaikum. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome to News and Views.
Wa alaikum salam, Salelo, and to all of your viewers and listeners as well.
No, pleasure is all ours. I want to jump right into it. First and foremost, congratulations on what was a very, very successful summit. Salam Media was there for most part of it, and it is a 10 out of 10, from our end. I think it was urgent, it was needed. But from your perspective, what would you say was the primary objective of convening this Indaba, particularly as we lead up to the local government elections later on in the year?
I think historically, the Muslim community has had relations with political actors and with government, but it has always happened in a very ad hoc way. It would be based on whatever the issue was at a particular point in time. And I think one of the key things we wanted to do is make sure that our engagement with political actors is a lot more structured, it's a lot more clearer, and it's a lot more representative of the broader Muslim community, because one of the key things about the Muslim community in South Africa is that we're not homogenous, that we have lived experience that is fundamentally different based on where you live, based on your race, based on your economic income, and therefore issues will differ depending on who you are and where you live in this country. And one of the key aspects that we wanted to make sure is that when we do engage with political actors, that as much as possible, that we're able to put forward the various lived realities of our communities in South Africa on the one side, but over and above that, we are all South African citizens, and there are common challenges that all of us face. And as I think, as the Muslim community, we want to be able to contribute to the public discourse in a way that looks at how do we better South Africa for everybody, not just for the Muslim community. So I think that was one of the key objectives, is to be able to say we need to be more structured, we need to be more regular in how we engage, but we also need to have a clear framework around what that engagement looks like.
Very, very important. There was something that really stood out for me. The fact that there was engagement, direct engagement with political parties. How important was that aspect? And, for our audience who, unfortunately couldn't be part of these engagements, can you give insight on what was the nature of those engagements? Which political parties did you guys bring, on board, and what was the reason to make sure that they are there in person and to take those very, very important and somewhat difficult questions from the various stakeholders?
So I think one of the key things is obviously there's quite a number of political parties within South Africa, and there's quite a number of them that have representation both at local, provincial, and national level. I think one of the key things we needed to focus on is understand that we only have 3 days, and within 3 days, we only have X amount of time to speak to political
Yeah.
parties. So what we did is we sent out invitations to, I think we started off with the big political parties, the ones that have, quite a substantive a base. And then we included other political parties as well that have, for example, regional strength. And the key aspect, I think if you were sitting in the room with the political parties, we had put forward policy positions, and these policy positions, again, as I said in the beginning, we try to draw from the lived experience of broadly South Africans, but also the Muslim community, and put forward those policy positions to political parties. We wanted to test where they stand in terms of those policy positions. So within that framework, a lot of questions were posed in a structured way from the panel that we had, but also from the floor, from the stakeholders, the delegates that were in the room. It was every single political party that came and engaged. It was robust, it was honest, and it was also, I think it gave the people in the room and everybody else also a clear idea of where political parties, stand on these issues and whether they're actually able or willing to move on the issue. Because that's the other key thing, Salelo. I think we have to understand that for us to be able to see change in our society, we need to be able to speak to these political parties. And we need to be able to test whether or not, when we engage with them, when we present our position, whether or not they're actually able to take that into consideration, and whether or not they're able to add that to their policy positions, or whether they're able to shift closer to our positions. And I think that was one of the key objectives of these sessions. In terms of who we invited, or at least who accepted our invitation, perhaps that's the more pertinent point. On Monday, we started with the IFP, and then we had Rise Mzansi. On Tuesday, we had the Economic Freedom Fighters, we had Al Jamaa, and we had the ANC. And then on Wednesday, we had the Democratic Alliance.
I want to touch on the DA because I know you'll be getting this question a lot. I think this question was also answered at the summit, but just for the benefit of our listeners who are not there, the decision of the Democratic Alliance to be part of this conversation, how difficult or how easy was it? And ultimately, why did you feel the need to have them there, considering a well-known fact that they are not particularly liked, desired by the broader Muslim community because of multiple positions that they've taken, particularly on Palestine, amongst other issues. Please get that out of the way. I know you're going to get it a lot.
So I think the first thing is the DA is the government of the day in Cape Town, in the Western Cape, where there's a high density of Muslims, and they're in coalition governments in different parts of the country, as well as in the GNU. Right. And we need to understand that our political landscape is changing. It is changing. And that means that if there are things, and I'll be very specific, if we're reflecting on Cape Town and the Western Cape, there are really serious issues around, for example, things like densification. There are issues around affordability. There's issues around burial grounds and the lack of burial grounds in Cape Town. There's issues around heritage and Boerkaap. The reality is the party that controls the government and makes the decisions with regards to these issues is the DA. If we
Yeah.
stand outside and we say we don't want to engage with them, we're not interested in talking with them, how do we protect our interest as a Muslim community, but also the interest of the working class, the poor, and other parts, other citizens in this country? So I think the decision to include the DA was on the principal basis that we understand that the South Africa's political climate is changing, and we need to
Yeah.
be able to speak to everybody. But on the issue of Palestine specifically, this was something that in the lead up to this Indaba was spoken about in terms of we cannot invite the DA without raising this issue. And I think, Salela, you were in the room. It was
Yeah.
a very robust engagement with the DA on this issue. We challenged them and we wanted them to explain, because I think one of the other things perhaps as a Muslim community we have failed in the past is to actually say, have we sat down with the DA and explained our position, the position not just of the Muslim community, but of people that are freedom loving and justice loving? Or have we only stood on the street and said, they are a Zionist organization, they are this, they are that? And I think that was one of the other key objectives, is to be able to say, we're going to have this conversation with you, and we want to see whether you are actually willing to move on this particular issue, because it is something that is important to the Muslim community, yes, but to anybody that is freedom loving and justice loving. So I think that is the two underpinning aspects around the invitation around the DA. We appreciate that they came and that they were willing to engage, that they're willing to, to unpack their position, and that, they were willing to accept the criticism and as well as the input presented by the community.
Very, very important. We're running out of time, but I can't let you go without touching on something that's very, very important: the Muslim Civic Consensus. What exactly is this document? How was it developed? How important is it? And how can people access it?
Okay, so I think I'm going to try and be as brief as possible, but we realized right at the beginning that we cannot engage with political actors unless we've tested the pulse of the Muslim community. So I think the first thing, when we started this process, we opened up a survey, and this survey was online, and its intent was to be able to get the different perspectives of Muslims around not only what their issues are, but also around their voting patterns, that research survey formed a large portion of the basis of this document. We then obviously did some online consultations with civil society, with ulama, with business leaders, to be able to also get that perspective in terms of informing this document. And then the last part is we have UUCSA has political strategy committee. And so we did a lot of desktop research around, some of the key issues that face South Africa. That was the background in terms of how we developed this document. We tried to be as research methodical as we possibly could and as consultative as we possibly could in the shortest amount of time. We then made this document public to the broader Muslim community to say, listen, this is what we've put together. Please comment and give your additional inputs. Please tell us where the gaps are or the things we have not focused on or have not seen. We then collated that input, and then that also formed part of this document. Now, I think the key thing is, one, this document is still in its iterative stages. We needed a framework. We had a framework that we presented to political parties, but it is not a final document. And we are still accepting input, because one of the key things we have decided is that this engagement with political parties is not going to be once off. It's going to be something that we're going to try and do every 6 months. So every 6 months, we have to go back to the community and say, listen, these were the issues we presented, 50 plus issues. Are there any others that you feel that have risen in the last few months, or that we might have missed? And so that process is continuing and ongoing. For the community, in terms of wanting to give input, you can. The document is on UUCSA's website, and there is the tab that is on the website enables you to make submissions right there within the document, and we receive it and incorporate and obviously analyze and then incorporate it into the broader framework.
Oh, there you have it. Fazlin, Fransman, member of UUCSA Political Strategy Committee. Jazakallah so much for joining us. And I think it was a very, very impactful, Indaba that you guys had, because for the longest of time, South African politics are almost top to bottom, without realizing that democracy is, the people, for the people, by the people. And I saw exactly that, where these political parties were held accountable and there were asked some very, very difficult questions. And I think that was the key takeout, to make sure that these people are held responsible, and we asked them what are they going to do for the community, and not the inverse. So I think congratulations and jazakallah so much. Really appreciate it.
Shukran so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
There you go. That was Fazlin Fransman, member of UUCSA Political Strategy Committee, reflecting on the outcomes of a very, very successful 3-day municipal elections in Indaba that was held in Johannesburg this past week. We're going to take a quick break. News and views continues after this.
Soweto, it's time to stand together for justice, peace, and solidarity. Join us for the annual Soweto Walk for Gaza, taking place on Saturday, the 20th of June at 7:30 a.m. The walk will begin at the historic Regina Mundi Church and proceed to the monumentous Dlamini Mosque, bringing together people of all faiths, backgrounds, and communities in a powerful show of unity and support. Bring your family, friends, and fellow residents as we walk together for a common cause. Let your voice be heard and your presence counted. That's the annual Soweto Walk for Gaza, Saturday the 20th of June at 7:30 in the morning, starting at Regina Mundi Church and ending at Dlamini Mosque. Together we walk, together we stand, together we show solidarity.